Hey, what's going on? Welcome to another episode of Hanging Out with Nolan Hong. And joining me on this episode of the podcast, we got a 2-for-1 special. We've got two guests in one show. They individually have been in the local wedding industry for many years. We have Joseph Esser from Joseph Esser Photography and Tessa Gomes from Fred and Kate Events, but they collectively have created a brand new podcast that's been really awesome, and it's going to be super helpful for everyone and anyone who is wanted to know anything about weddings here in Hawaii, or planning a wedding, or are even thinking about, do I want to get married? Well, they'll get you all the info that you need from the insider's perspective. It's called Unveiling Paradise podcast, and it's out now, and you guys got to check it out. But in the meantime, before you do, let's check out this episode. Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome Joseph and Tessa. Hey, guys.
Hi.
Oh, yeah.
Nice.
I love that. We have fans.
Yeah. And Joseph, I'm glad you got the memo for our uniform. We got the hair done the same, the shirts. Tessa always has to stand out and be the wildflower of the group. So, yeah, this works out perfectly, guys.
Yep, we're wearing all black shirts, and we got the matching hairdo. It's perfect. Looking great. You're looking amazing, though.
I'm glad that you... Tessa had told me before we jumped on, like, hey, is this going to be on camera? And I was like, yeah. And she goes, oh, great. I'm going to tell Joseph it's not, so that he doesn't get ready. I'm glad you didn't fall for it.
Or did I?
I said, Nolan's too nice. We can't do this. It's going to stress Nolan out. I would have. Yeah. I would have not told him if it would have made you mad, Nolan.
That would have been awesome. And I would have been in my Bert and Ernie pajamas. It would have been great. Awesome.
Is this kind of your guys' like dynamic? Like it always seems kind of like a brother sister kind of thing, like where you guys are always poking fun at each other, but you guys know that at the end of it all, it's all fun and games and it's all love. Is that kind of like a fair assessment of how your guys' dynamic is?
I actually don't think so. I think we are super competitive people.
Really?
And I think that we keep on trying to be like, who's the funnier one? Who's the smarter one? So, it's a little bit of both. It's like, okay, who's gonna do this better? Who's gonna do this? Who can get this done first? And that sort of thing. So maybe it's a little bit.
It's nonstop. It's a nonstop competition, and I think we have told ourselves more than once, like, our podcast, like, we're working together. Like, really, if one of us wins the other, but we can't seem to let it go, and it still comes down to, okay, but I was funnier, right? Like, who was funnier in this episode? I don't know what it is, but it's definitely a competition.
Yeah.
Well, they all say like iron sharpens iron, right? But at the same time, like, does that also get exhausting for you guys? Because I mean, you guys have to work with each other so much, not only in the podcast, but also in weddings and stuff. I mean, you guys are kind of like a professional married couple, right?
Pretty much. I don't know if I'd say I'm sharp, but or maybe dull iron sharpens dull iron. I'm not sure. I think what we really have is, I think, a really fun, like, working sense of humor, and so, like, we've gone through in the wedding industry, especially in the last couple of years, we've gone through a lot of ups and downs, and I think when you can step back and sort of laugh about everything, and find humor and find, like, some sort of joy in all the chaos, and you think of, Nolan, I know you have done many a wedding yourself, and weddings are kind of their own unique creature, right? Where anything can happen, and so I think a lot of it is just, do you have the right perspective on everything? You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. When you said anything can happen, I was gonna save this for the end, but now that you brought it up, do you have any of stories like that stick out in your mind in both of your experiences throughout the many years that just stand out of, like, wow, I know we've seen a lot of crazy things, but this one kind of is up there or is at the top as far as that description of anything can happen? Like, any crazy stories?
I think the funny thing is, Nolan, there's so many crazy things, and it really kind of depends on which way you go, right? If we just talk about just in the last couple of weeks, there's just, just so much. I think Joseph texted me one day where one of the father of the grooms passed out.
What?
From heat, right? They had to call ambulance, right? And then at one of crazy things happen constantly.
Yeah, totally.
At one of my weddings just this weekend, they were drinking, and it was at an outdoor venue at Lani Kohunua, and the mom of the groom was like on her knees, and they're pouring champagne like down her throat. And I was like, "What's happening?" Things get crazy, and I think just every wedding is so unique and so different, and I think it's really fun to see how different things can be. Some things are a little crazier, some are more serious than others, but like Joseph was saying, I think it's perspective, right? It's how do we really kind of have fun in all of this, and it's been a crazy couple of years for all of us. So just trying to find the fun and the humor, and I think that's what Joseph and I try to do, on our podcast, right? Weddings are stressful, but we try to break it down and make it fun, and I think that's what our relationship is just trying to keep a light tone on the craziness that all of us are going through, I think.
Yeah, and to sort of add on to this, Nolan, your question is like, should we give you the PG versions of the things we see happening? There's things we can't talk about.
It's a PG show. This is a PG show.
We'll save that for the other stories for the bonus episodes.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, no, and I think that's the thing is like when you look at all the experiences that we've had collectively, there's so much to share. There's so many little mini life lessons that, I think are super helpful when you're talking to people about, probably one of the biggest days of a couple's, relationship, but also probably one of the most stressful days that, you can possibly think about too. And so I think that a lot of our podcast content comes out of that, just trying to want to help people navigate through their wedding day and try to figure out, how to when things become chaotic. I shared this on our I think it was like one of our first episodes. We had this wedding where the bridesmaid goes and she gets into her bridesmaid's dress and the zipper rips right off, this cheap bridesmaid's dress. And, it's like, we talked about this in a really productive way. Like here would be like a horrific thing that happened, right? Where, like a bridesmaid doesn't get to walk down the aisle with everybody. But, it became something where because they had planned a buffer time in their day, they were able to like fix it. And it was like a really funny story for everybody as the day kind of unfolded, even for the girl whose dress fell apart on her, and I think that's something that, we kind of want to, I guess we're kind of like trying to teach people, like, how do you manage these, these events, and how do you manage, weddings, and all the chaos that happens around it. And there's so many good stories. I know that like we could probably go on for like a couple hours with all the chaos and craziness that happens.
Is that what motivated you guys and inspired you guys to create this podcast? Because it was that you felt that by having this kind of information out there and having your perspectives out there, that could hopefully help maybe the way weddings are done and executed here because of what you've seen, and maybe help people avoid these common mistakes or misconceptions?
Well, if I can talk on behalf of Tessa really quick, she just wants to be a podcast star. That's all. It was just ego, pure ego.
Exactly. It's true. I think when we started the podcast, a couple of things came to mind. We thought we really wanted to talk about weddings because we've both been in this industry for so long, and we have, I think, as professionals, we have a different perspective. There's a lot of podcasts where it's a lot of brides that, got married and they're kind of telling their story and their tips. For us as professionals, we thought it'd be really cool to talk about it from a professional standpoint because we're seeing many weddings, not just one wedding. So we're seeing things that have worked, things that haven't worked. And I think coming from a wedding planner and a photographer, we're coming at it from two different ways. And I think that's one thing that Joseph and I have realized is we are similar in a lot of ways, but we're different in a lot of ways. So our perspective is different. And I think that is kind of what we're trying to show people is there are multiple ways to think about things and multiple ways to look at your wedding. So what works best for you? So we just kind of felt like it was a different niche that not everyone saw, right? There's a lot of podcasts with brides talking about their weddings and their one point of view. We're trying to show multiples. And I think that was kind of a fun way. And again, I think, just trying to do it in a really, really fun way. And that's why we kind of drop in our stories, some experiences, again, all the G-rated. Joseph told me we cannot have explicit content on our podcast. So that's fine.
What a Debbie Downer. Well, and then also, the other part is we live in Hawaii. I know your show is, a lot about Hawaii and Hawaii stories and, that. And like the thing that's so cool about our experience is we get to work in a destination wedding market. We are like the number 1 or 2 top destination wedding market in the United States. And so I think that was also something that we saw was kind of missing from, all the different podcasts about weddings is, if you're planning a wedding in your hometown, it's probably a lot easier than if you're planning it, 3,000-4,000 miles away. And how do you kind of navigate, that, those decision-making process of like hiring? Do you hire local? Do you fly in your vendors? And so I think that a lot of it too was like, some of it was just kind of, we were sort of, I guess, preaching what we wanted all of our couples to know before we even have those consultations. You know what I mean? Where it's like, it's helpful information to get out there. And also I think it's unique. We have something unique to share about, working in this place of Hawaii.
Yeah. And I think that's so amazing that, the kind of content and knowledge that you're sharing with your audience is so valuable. And usually, I think a lot of the information that you are giving for free in this sense is something that people would have to, pay a lot of money to, get, that kind of professional feedback and education. And so it's really neat how you guys have just taken this on and saying, nope, you just want to see this whole industry thrive and the bride and groom experience be so much better when it can be if they just have some of these nuggets of knowledge and background. You mentioned that you guys can provide different perspectives, being that from different sides of the wedding industry. What's an example of how that how that shows in your product or your presentation or your podcast?
I think one thing that's really funny that he and I are on very opposite pages more than once, I think, is when we talk about Pinterest.
Okay.
And I think that was one thing where I think he was talking and I was like, that's awful advice. And I think, again, like we're coming at it from different standpoints, right? So to give you the example, Nolan, when we're talking about weddings and when I'm working with a couple and we're working on their budgets, they're looking at Pinterest and they're seeing these really, really fabulous styled shoots, which are often untransferable to real life weddings, right? You see these beautiful candles and you've seen these pictures and they're out on the beach and these tables and they're lit real candles. And, if you're at a venue out, at Lani Kohonua, like those candles are not going to stay lit. This is not a real wedding. So it's funny because I know Joseph will tell people like, go to Pinterest, go take it, look at your photos. And I'm just like, stop telling people that.
Right. And then you have to deal with all of those things that your clients are seeing and want to have. Like for me, like we just jump into this Pinterest conversation really quick. Like for me, like that's sort of how I get to see a couple's inspiration and their style and their aesthetic, and so like, those are super important things for your photographer to know. Like, okay, I really like these dark and moody kind of photos, or I really like this light and airy feel. And, like for me, that's a really powerful tool for our couples to be able to share with, some of their vendors. For Tessa, it's a nightmare because it's like, here's $1 million wedding and you have a $20,000 budget. It's not going to happen,
Right. So I often tell people, I'm the dream crusher. I'm constantly telling people, like, you can't do that with that budget, right? If they see these fabulous pictures on Pinterest that Joseph's showing them, and I'm like, no, you can't do that. Not for your budget. Or what can we do to adjust it? So there's a lot of managing expectations because of Pinterest, because you can see anything in the world now, right? Yeah. Where they're looking at these Italian villas. And if they want to get married here, like it's not going to translate the same, right? So it's just kind of understanding that, where Joseph's like, just do it, no problem, whatever.
Well, to better understand, so from Joseph's perspective, Joseph, you're just looking for what their vibe and their feel is so that you can match that for the artistic side of your picture taking. You're not literally looking for them to bring that in and have it set up so that you can shoot it that way. Is that kind of what you're
right. So a lot of like what we sort of talk about with our couples is, this is somebody else's wedding, right? So don't, have your own event, have your own wedding, have your own experience. Don't try to like copy someone else's day, and so if it's, I love seeing these pictures of like the bride and groom in the rain, and it's like, the lights are popping through the raindrops. If it's not raining on your wedding day, I'm sorry, you can't do that photo, and like what
Tessa, you could bring a hose.
Yeah, I got a hose. I'll do it.
That is true. I mean, yeah, you can creatively. I mean, that's so important to you. Like there's better times of the year to try to get those. Right. But you're totally right. Like, and for me, it's about inspiration. It's about aesthetic. It's about getting to understand the couple's style. For Tessa, it's like these are horrible examples because they're not realistic, and she has to
they're
ground
not tangible. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But I feel like there are a lot of things that, as we kind of started talking through, I think some of our episodes in the beginning, when we started talking, we realized like, wow, we really disagree on a lot of things. But I think that's kind of what makes it interesting for the listeners, is we're not always on the same page.
Yeah.
I think we're heading towards the same goal, right? I think both of us know at the end of the day, like, we want the couple to be happy. We want to help them with their vision. But it's understanding that we come about it in different ways. And I think our goal on the podcast is to have listeners see and understand that there are multiple ways to get what you want. What makes the most sense for you.
And I think that authenticity of you guys bringing to the table your true feelings and opinions, even if they are differing, I think that adds to the listeners' trust in you guys, and that it's not just like, oh, these guys have crafted this message and are just trying to, do something. I feel that people, when they hear this kind of dynamic, then they know, oh, this is their real opinions, because they're not trying to, pretty it up and make it seem like everything's perfect and wonderful. Like,
right. And I think
they're getting a real expectation, right?
Yeah. And I think the funny thing is we've actually, I think, because we try to edit and clean up, I see a lot of ums, and I know that Joseph spends a lot of time cleaning it up, but, we've stopped a couple times because I think we kind of got heated, and we're like, we're not on the same page, or we're not going anywhere, or, we're like, what are we trying to say? Because we're so far off, right? Like, so I think it really is, we're being very authentic. We have kind of touch points of here are the topics, but we're never trying to control what the other person is trying to say, right? So a lot of times, I think it's very productive, and I think we've had a couple times where we're like, wait, what? Tone in, and and he's very good about kind of getting me back on track. Like, what are you trying to say here? Versus just being angry or whatever. So I think it's really, I think it's good. I think it's good because people should see, the multiple views of a wedding, or, what we're trying to get.
Yeah. And
when you guys go ahead, Joe.
I was just saying, we walk totally different, paths on a wedding day. What she does, all the behind the scenes things that no one ever experiences. I walk into the scene, I'm like, wow, look at this beautiful wedding, this setup, this is amazing, and like I don't get the same experience that she gets when she's orchestrating and making this event happen.
Yeah, when you guys told me that you're thinking or planning on creating a podcast, I was excited about it because I thought the idea was fantastic. But you're probably like the fourth person or group of people that have said that they're going to start a podcast, and I give them all the information that I give, and then they don't do it. And it's like, oh, come on, guys. Like, it's not as hard as you think. Like, just do it. And you guys, I was like, oh, especially that there are two of you and knowing your busy schedules, I was like, oh, this is going to be another example of them going, we want to do it, and they're not going to do it. And then when you guys launched, I was like, hey, they did it. It's awesome. So what were your expectations going in when you were creating this, and has it been met, or have things kind of, now that you're going through it, it's like, whoa, we weren't expecting it to come out like this?
I mean, I think I can speak for Joseph and I both when I say that this was way harder than I thought it was going to be. I mean, when we talked to you months ago, it was a casual, like, this is going to, I think in my head, I was like, okay, I want to challenge myself. I'm going to start a podcast, partnering with Joseph just made sense. But the actual, like, logistics of how to do it. And he's very good about, like, hold on, like, take a step back and let's, read a book. Let's figure out what to do. Let's talk to people. And it just got really overwhelming. There was so much to do that, I was kind of dragging my feet a little bit because it felt like so much work. And it is a lot of work. There's so much to do, but it's fun. I mean, we just wrapped our first season. So we did 15 episodes. We're taking a small break, but it's crazy. Like, I don't know what to say. Like, it's so much more work. It's rewarding. It's fun. Just surprising how much more work I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that the one thing that's the biggest asset of the show is having Tessa as part of, like, as the co-host, because she is the planner. She's the organizer. She sets these timelines, and she's like, if you don't get that edit to me by Tuesday night, like, hell and fire is going to happen, and so that I think having someone who keeps you accountable, right, is always super important, and that you're slightly scared of.
There's always that little bit of fear, Nolan. I'm telling you, that's what makes you successful.
I don't know if "little bit" is an accurate description. There's a lot of fear.
Back. He's like, "Yes, I will be at your party. Yes, I will be." Like, no hesitation. That fear.
Yeah. I'm like, you texted, I guess.
I was like, Nolan, it's been 5 minutes. Why haven't you replied yet? But
which, honestly, funny enough, your sister just texted me like 5 minutes before we jumped on here, and I was like, should I answer her now or after? I was like, I'd rather make sure that Tessa's not mad at me for being late than upsetting her sister, Tana. Tana, sorry, I took a long time.
We're very similar in that way, I think. We unintentionally scare people. I don't know why. But what I was going to say, honestly, is, so, with working on this podcast with Joe has been so fun. Like, I think our personalities are so, like I said, we're similar but so different. So we can just have the most random conversations, which I think ties into our relationship on the podcast. I think one of the biggest feedbacks that we got from people is just, you can tell that you guys enjoy each other's company, right? So we're talking about things that, again, even though we're not agreeing on things, and even though, and I don't even know if I told anyone, but he was mad at me through an entire episode one time. I had no idea until after. It was after.
What was he mad about?
Oh,
Joe, do you remember?
So it was one of those mornings when you're trying to talk and just nothing is coming out. It's just all garbled, and I got upset because she kept on making fun of me. I was like, she's like, why are you being such a crybaby? Just put your words together. Get those words out your mouth. And I'm like, Tessa, calm down. I'm trying hard. Give me a second. Anyway, and she's exaggerating. I wasn't mad at her, but like sometimes when you're off your game, you know what I'm saying? Like, you get off your game and it's hard to get back.
We listened to the episode after, and I was like, you weren't laughing at my jokes. And he's like, I was mad at you. I'm like, oh my god, what?
Who was mad at who?
You were mad, remember? And then he even made me listen to that, because he does all the editing, and it takes hours and hours, and I give him so much credit, but he went back and found the part where I was making fun of him and made me listen to it.
We're learning. No, and that's a fun story, but really, truly, we do have a ton of fun, even on our off days, when you're trying to put out your, jumbled words and everything. I would say to kind of also add on to this, our goal was to get to 15 episodes, for our first season. And that, and like, as your podcast evolves and things, it's like, wow, like there's so many people that don't get through the first 3. And then, we made it through 3 and we made it to 5, made it to 10. And I think just getting to finish a full season and hit our goal, like that was a big highlight for me. And, it does take a lot of work. And I think the stepping back from it all, like the reality is we have a lot to talk about. We have a lot more to share, and so 15 episodes seem like a lot, but like, I mean, you're on 212 episodes.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that's amazing.
I keep getting the number wrong.
But it really, go ahead.
What kind of, so for those who haven't had a chance to discover your podcast, like what are some of the topics? I know you have 15 episodes. Is each episode based around specific topics, or how is it structured, and what kind of things can people expect to experience when they tune into your episodes?
Right. So, we really wanted to focus on destination weddings because we are, we're in Hawaii, which is just the ideal for so many people, right? So we talk about, should you hire local vendors versus bringing in your own vendors, right? Or we talk about why should you have a destination wedding? We talk about, our top 5 destination locations. So understanding that Hawaii is not everyone's top choice, Are we looking for 24/7 parties? Then go to Vegas, right? So we kind of talk about those things. And in the middle of it, we thought it'd be really cool to kind of talk about just more detailed things. We talk about things as a wedding planner that we wish that you'd know, or as a photographer, just tips for photography. When you're booking a photographer, what should you be looking for? A fun one that I really liked was just traditions. So he and I kind of took a vote, like keep or ditch, for fun traditions. And our episode 15, our last one, was probably my favorite, where we talked to former brides and we asked them, what are tips that you would share with other brides about your destination wedding? And so there were some things that honestly I hadn't even thought of. We talked to one of my couples who is from Australia, and she's like, the dollar is just killing us right now. And I'm like, yeah, really when you pay for things makes a difference because of the exchange rate. So there were so many things that it was such good advice that we kind of brought in from our past clients, and I thought that was really cool.
What's the
and
most...
even though you're
well, sorry,
go ahead.
I was going to say, what's the
no,
most...
I go, you go, I go.
No. All right, you go, I go.
Well, let me just ask this quick question, just to jump off of what Tana brought up. So, even though the focus of your podcast, sorry,
not my sister.
Oh no,
I'm telling my sister you said that.
That's the guilt that's still hovering over me, like that I didn't answer your text message. No, so what Tessa was saying, as far as the focus of the podcast is for destination weddings, but some of those episodes, you don't have to. You can be a local wedding that would still get so much from it, like the things that you wish brides knew about from the perspective of the photographer, or traditions and whatnot. So I think that's really great that both a destination wedding couple or a local wedding couple would still get so much valuable information from your podcast. And with that, now, Joseph, you can talk. Now you can say what you wanted to. Go ahead.
Your turn.
All right. I mean, so to kind of add on to that, Nolan, like, I think that our listener, like our imaginary target listener, could be anyone on the planet planning a wedding anywhere, and so it doesn't have to necessarily be someone who's planning a wedding in Hawaii. They could be planning a wedding in California or Colorado or Florence, Italy, or wherever. And I think that it doesn't matter where you're at. The information is super helpful and useful. And I think that's kind of how we had been sort of trying to target, how do we create content too? So it's not just like we get to share our experiences in, being in Hawaii and working in this particular place. But I think those experiences can transcend, geography as well.
Yeah. And as far as you guys mentioned that your dynamic together on the podcast, how close were you guys prior to starting the podcast? Like, were you guys like longtime friends and that's why it made sense? Or have you gotten closer because of your experience of doing this podcast together?
This is a great question and a great story. And I think you're going to hear two different answers depending on who gets to speak first. Tessa, you have the floor, but it is our history together is kind of actually pretty funny because our working relationship is actually fairly new, even though we've been in
the
industry for a very long time.
Oh, interesting. Okay, Tessa, you get first crack at this.
Am I giving the true story or?
There is only one truth, and if you need me to share it, I will.
No. You can share this story.
Okay, so this was maybe like 8 years ago. I'm like pretty new to the industry, like trying to meet all the coordinators and everything. And I happened to run into Tessa it's probably some sort of industry mixer. And, we're chatting and whatnot. And after the party, I said, "Hey, Tessa, it's great meeting you. Such a nice conversation we had. I'm like, can't wait to, look forward to working together with you in the future." And then 7 years later, she ghosted me for 7 years. Even though we're in the same industry, she's like never responded to my message. Never, like nothing. There's like, nothing.
It was read. I read the message.
That's even worse. Tessa, that makes it worse. I don't know why you would say that. Don't admit to that.
So I don't know. I'm not sure. Maybe the conversation wasn't as awesome as I remember. But, so fast forward like 7 years. So we have, obviously this pandemic, right? And the wedding industry in Hawaii is...
No. Can I interrupt first?
Yeah.
Okay. So before the pandemic, we have a mutual friend. He's a photographer as well, and he's a good friend of mine. And so we'll grab coffee all the time, and he's like, "Hey, I really feel like you should connect with Joseph. He's great. You'd like him. I think you guys would get along." And I'm like, "Nah, I'm good."
Wait, why? What was this aversion to getting to know? Did he do something wrong at that first meeting?
It wasn't an aversion. It was more of I got a lot going on in my life. Like, I'm good. I have a lot of photographers that I work with. I'm busy with life, whatever. And so
you have enough friends.
I have enough friends. I don't need more friends. And people want to be friends with me. I don't know. So and the funny thing is this, my friend has told me more than once, probably 4 to 5 times, like, you should get to know him. Like, I really think you should get to know him. And so the funny thing is, I want to say, I was like, fine, Michael, I'll do this. So I want to say maybe it was in 2020, and it was right before the whole crazy pandemic thing. I, being so nice, reached out to Joseph, and I'm like, "Hey, I just had breakfast with Michael. He, he said I should connect with you. Like, let's grab coffee." And so I made the first move. I was so nice. And then the pandemic happened and everything got shut down.
We never got coffee. We actually never got coffee. I think I was like, "No, I have enough friends. I'm good."
He posted me. And so I think we were emailing, and it was something like, I was like, "Okay, let's just cancel." And he's like, "Oh, let's just do a call." And I'm like, "Why? Why?"
Who does that? Who calls anyone anyways?
I'm not even going to get coffee out of this now. That's and I still don't. But yeah, so I think, and then the pandemic happened, and so Joseph, and I'm sure you know this, but he is the current president of the Oahu Wedding Association. So when the pandemic happened, I think, with everything going on and just me being who I am, I was like, I can't sit by and do nothing. Like, I think I reached out to the Oahu Wedding Association. And I'm like, what can I do to help? And I think I forgot who I reached out to, and I think they connected me with Joseph, and they're like, work with him, figure out what you can do. And so I think at that point, we really kind of started working together with a lot of just the reopening strategies, right, with the state and the city. Just a lot of really heavy meetings and just trying to figure out how we can keep our industry open, working on grants, working on, Nolan, I know you were aware of all of those crazy things going on, but I think that's when Joseph and I really started to work together, not even on a wedding capacity, but just a working relationship, just knowing that he's not super weird, and that we could communicate effectively together. And I think that's what we realized, right, when we're meeting with, I think he and I met with the governor together. We met with a lot of city council members. We met with the mayor. And I think just realizing that he and I complement each other really well in those meetings, in person, in writing and whatnot, it made sense that we would partner together on something more.
And before I still want to let you guys continue the story, but I just wanted to ask, in all those meetings with all of, the governors and the leaders, because from the outside, it didn't make sense of how the wedding industry was not even able to, to exist during those times when other businesses that seem to be far more dangerous, I guess, given the circumstances. So I never truly understood or got an explanation as to why, the wedding industry, which is so valuable also to our economy as well, why that it wasn't supported. Did you ever in those meetings come to an understanding, at least, as to like what was the issue or what the holdup was, or was it just a matter of miscommunication?
That is such a big question, Nolan. Like, oh my gosh. So I guess
I don't want to get you in trouble.
Yeah, no. I think that, just for all the listeners who maybe weren't in Hawaii or are listening from afar, like Hawaii was completely shut down during the pandemic, unlike a lot of other states. And so, there was a point where it was illegal to go to the beach, with someone else. And so I think in terms of our industry, I guess and this sounds horrible, but I feel like we were at that point kind of the low hanging fruit. It's like, how can we show people that, we're taking this seriously, and we're, like weddings are these social gatherings and they're dangerous, and like, well, but we won't like totally dismantle the entire economy. So like, luau's were allowed to be open. I think that's kind of what you're alluding to. Like there was some industries that were like, you'd have 300-400 people getting together, mingling and, whatever, yet it was illegal to go to the beach with your family. There was like some, and I think for our industry, I think one of the things that happened was, the wedding industry never needed to really have anybody lobbying for them before. There was never a point, I think, where we really needed our elected officials to actually hear what we had to say until the pandemic. And then I think what happened kind of organically is people started coming out of the woodwork saying, how can I help? Like, what can I do? How can I help, facilitate these meetings with, different elected officials? And so I think, I think that became really apparent when all the other industries were allowed to reopen, except for the wedding industry. And I think now more than ever, people see the need for, when you work through things together, you can do bigger things. And so I don't know exactly. I think that in terms of some of the meetings that we had with the governor and the mayor, I think that they were at that particular point in history really just listening to whoever was in charge at the Department of Health. And if the Department of Health said, you guys are the public enemy number one, then that was us. And I think that also, bigger picture, I think that we didn't have the power of the lobbyists that like the hotel industry has, or some of the tourists, luau, sort of facility kind of people have. I think that's something that we still want to really grow. That, I think that the wedding industry is a small but really important part of our economy. So.
Yeah. Well, on behalf of all the other wedding industry workers like myself, I just want to thank both of you for all of your guys' hard work. I kept up with all of the updates of what you guys were going through and doing, and it was a lot of work and a lot of effort. And we have you guys and your group to thank for where we're at today, where we we're able to have that support and get things back going up. So thank you guys.
Yeah, well, and then just to kind of tie this back into everything, like that was sort of, I think, really where Tessa and I really found that we had a lot to share. And again, like we weren't on the same page about a lot of stuff. And so through all of that, and all the sort of kind of really heavy conversations and heavy discussions we were having about the wedding industry, we realized that we also found a lot of humor in all of it too. and that, you can have, you can take any situation and learn and grow from it and, share with other people. And so, I think that's sort of how our podcast evolved into like something where it's like, this is an idea to, let's do this, let's share what we have. And, but yeah, the pandemic for our industry was very, very tough times for everyone that was, that lives and works in this industry for sure.
But I think the not nice thing, and I don't want to, make less of what it is from the pandemic, but, we just did a poll of our industry, for example, and I think the cool thing is there are a lot of people that came out with that have pivoted really well. Mm-hmm. They've started new side businesses, or they've reconnected with vendors again, right? It brought a lot of good. It brought a lot of revived connections. 7 years in the making. So I think it's really cool that it brought a lot of really good things, or things that may not have happened mm-hmm. if we weren't forced to come together as an industry. And I think the wedding industry, like Joe said, it can be very, very separate. We don't have a big organization, a lobbyist for us. So everyone kind of works and runs in their own circle, right? And I think the pandemic forced people to come together. I worked with a ton of different planners working on procedures and how could we reopen safely and whatnot. And I think it's really cool. I think it brought a lot of things, like our podcast to the front, where we're like, hey, let's try something different. Like, let's do something that we would never have considered before. And I think it worked out, not just their podcast, but in general, there's a lot of really cool pivots that people are doing.
Yeah, for sure. I think that through a lot of difficulties and challenges, there are a lot of teachable and learning moments and such. And I think the wedding industry really did a fantastic job of taking advantage of it. It suffered a lot, but I think in the long run, it's going to be stronger and more successful because of it.
For sure. I think so.
Tessa, are you saying that if the pandemic hadn't happened, you'd still be ghosting me, though? I just want to...
Yeah, 100%. That is exactly what I'm saying. So you should count your blessings.
That's what I was going to ask you, Joseph. Like, can we get your honest, like, legitimate response to when she did finally reach out to you 7 years later? What were you really thinking? How did you feel? Was it like, oh, finally? Or was it, oh, this girl now, she's going to call me?
Oh, yeah. What? Okay, so, like, I think, like, what Tessa just said is, like, we all kind of run in our own little circles. And you find that circle of vendors that you work really well with. And sometimes, you maybe cross between little bubbles or whatnot. And I think that exactly what you just said, Tessa, like a lot of things that were happening kind of forced us to like say, hey, I know you might be my competition, but what do you think about this? Like, how can we figure this out together? And I think that there was a lot of walls that were broken because of that. You actually reached out before the pandemic, so I'll give you that. So I don't think
Good
Well, I
on
don't
you,
know.
Tessa.
I'm not sure if I had I don't know if I had a feeling positive or negative of you reaching out. I can't say that I was like thrilled or I was, like
That's really rude.
spiteful.
We no one else is rude ghosting someone for 7 years.
That's fair. That's fair, Nolan. It was just timing. It was just not the right time for us. Now it is. See, we're
Yeah.
we weren't mature enough to work
Yeah,
together.
right.
It would have been a disaster.
Some may argue you're still not mature enough to
We're
work
not.
together,
No,
but you make it work anyway.
Yeah. We're more tolerant of each other now. Maybe that's
Joseph, you said you started 8 years ago. With getting into the wedding industry, and Tessa, I know you've been in it longer than that, and I'll get
Way
to
longer.
you and your origin story. But Joseph, what inspired you to get into this industry 8 years ago? And I don't know your age, but I assume that you had a career prior to that, right?
Like you're saying that I look young, right? Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah.
not what he's saying.
That's all I'm hearing.
No, I am, because I'm like,
No.
you look young enough that this could have been your first career.
That's what I heard.
8 years ago. Yeah.
Come on, Nolan, that's crazy. Don't flatter him.
Well, Tessa, we know Tessa's older than me, so that's fact.
False.
Not by a lot, but a little bit. A little bit counts. No, so actually, you're totally right. I had a completely different career lined up for myself. I was studying to be an anthropologist, believe it or not. And so,
Wow, that is completely different.
it's totally crazy. I actually finished up a PhD in anthropology. I actually have a doctorate in anthropology. But the crazy thing is, when I was taking courses, I was also taking photography elective courses because I was super interested in it. So I was getting, some of like that behind the scene professional training in the classroom. And I was also traveling to some really amazing places. So I actually did like a 2-year research project in the Kingdom of Tonga. And I was, when I was there, I'm like, gosh, this is so important to know how to take pictures, because I was getting invited to like the king's coronations and all these crazy things that were happening. And so I guess I developed those skills without thinking about business. And then when I was finishing up my graduate program, I also needed to pay my rent and everything and just by chance, someone had hired a photographer for a wedding that fell out last minute, and they're like, we'll take anybody. We don't care if you're good or bad. Just show up. And that's kind of how it all happened for me. I jumped into a wedding by chance, shot it, and I was like, this is an amazing thing. Like, it's so fun. Like, it's such good energy. You're with a couple on their very best day of their life. And I was also at this point, like, I was working as a teaching assistant, and I was making like zero money. And so it started to become like, oh, this is supplementing my income. And then it became a point where it's like, this is actually better than I could imagine doing, teaching. And so just kind of, I guess, organically, I saw this as an opportunity and something that I really enjoyed. And I switched careers after, hundreds of thousands of dollars in student loan debt. Like, I don't look back and think of anything other than that this was an amazing opportunity. I'm so happy that I jumped on it. And so that's sort of my origin story for photography. And I really feel like for me and my personality, weddings are a perfect fit. Like, I have so much fun, and, there's I guess there's a pride to like being able to like document someone's big day. It's like, it's an important role. It's an important job. And, like, you get to see those rewards when people are posting and printing and, like doing all that stuff with your photos. It's really pretty cool.
That's what I love about when I watch you work, is that you can see that joy. And I feel like, a person in the position like you, like photographer, videographer, like who's trying to capture someone in a joyous moment, like you need to have that joy too, so that it adds to that vibe. I've not often, but there's some times where I'll see like a videographer or a photographer have like just the angry looking face, and I'm like, how could a bride or groom be like comfortable going, when they're looking at someone just like, so
right. I know
I appreciate that about you.
No, I'm kidding. Well, Tessa hates this analogy, but I love it. I always think that like when you step, and the same thing for you, Nolan, like when you step on the scene for a wedding, the energy you bring, right, is contagious. So it's like Caesar Milan and the dog whisperer, right? He's like, okay, if she hates this analogy, but
I do hate it.
but it's like, that energy, if you're stressed out, you're going to stress everybody else out. If you're happy and you're excited and you really genuinely want to be there, it's going to be contagious. And same, I know that when we work weddings where you're emceeing, it's exactly that same thing. That's the energy that you bring, and it brightens up a crowd of people that might be apprehensive to open themselves up like that.
Yeah, and the same goes for you, Tessa, I'm sure, because like when I've worked with you on weddings, like it's such a stressful situation and things going wrong, but to see you just looking like, nope, everything's great, you guys good, and the bride and groom just feel like, oh, okay, this looks like this could be trouble, but Tessa seems totally fine, so I'm cool too. So it works the same way too, right?
Right. So there's always a time and place, right? I'm either going to be that calm look where I'm like, there could be fire flames behind you, but I'm like, fine, like just keep moving, or I need to be the hype squad and I need to kind of bring, raise their energy. And so it just kind of depends on the couple. I was just talking with Joseph yesterday. We have a couple coming up and their wedding is going to be so fun, but they're doing like a speech from like the Wolf of Wall Street. And so he needs like the hype squad. He's like, okay, Tessa, I'm practicing my speech, but there's parts where like, I need the audience to answer. He's like, I need you to answer. I'm like, okay, I got it. So it's going to be really cool. But again, right, I'm like, they need the hype. They don't need the call. They need the hype. So what can I do for them? It's going to be so fun, though. It's going to be such a good wedding. I'm excited.
Is that speech going to include all like the swearing in it too?
He told me, he's like, I want to warn you, there's going to be swearing. I'm like, it's your wedding. Like, you do whatever you want. And it's gonna be really fun. It's gonna be super fun. I hope Joseph gets it right.
I do too. I really do.
No
pressure to him. I know.
Joseph, what did your parents think or say when you said, "Hey, I know I got my PhD in anthropology, but I'm gonna be a wedding photographer"? Like, did they give you any kind of response?
I think. Well, first off, I think my dad was a business guy, and I think he was always like, "What are you doing being an anthropologist? You're never going to find a job doing that. Like, that's ridiculous." But my mom was an English professor, so she was always into liberal arts and these sort of things. But I always feel like my parents were kind of like, they always gave us the freedom to just kind of find ourselves and find our passion and just run with it. And so I definitely think like. And I have a 7-year-old, and I think that some of those lessons that you learn from your parents, you want to, bestow for your own children, and just giving them the freedom to like follow their passion, and like I would have never had guessed that I would have been where I'm at now, when I was, like in my 20s. I just wouldn't have. And it's just weird if you allow yourself to be open and find yourself and find that path and find and also just to make yourself uncomfortable. I think a lot of like with launching this podcast, both Tessa and I were very uncomfortable doing this. Like we've never done anything like this before. And I think when you open yourself up to be uncomfortable, you grow as a person. And I think that's what it's all about. I don't, I think my parents were probably always confused at all my life decisions.
Well, we have that in common.
Same. I think all same.
Yeah, Tessa.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you have an interesting background too. How did you get into this industry, and what did your parents think about it?
Yeah. So my background is a little different from Joe's, where I definitely was. My track was business. My degree is in business. I'm always like, I'm going to do business, right? I want to rule the world one day. So business makes sense. So I went to school here at UH. At the same time, I was working at an airline. So I was working full time, went to school full time. I was I worked a lot. I think that was my thing, is I put my head down and I just worked. And I was working for an airline during September 11th. When that happened, I lost my job. The airline went bankrupt. And so I was unemployed while looking for a new job. I worked for a hotel, and I realized like I wasn't happy. So I was like, let's just try something different. And so I'm going to say something which Joe told me not to say, but I went to culinary school.
Why would you not want her to say that?
He doesn't want me to talk about myself. He's very rude like that.
No. Wait, hold on. Time out. Wait, time out.
Don't make it about yourself, Tessa. Don't talk about yourself.
No. I've been listening to the last 2 episodes, Nolan, and like somehow it always ends in culinary school on your I'm like, we can't go to the culinary school.
Yeah, he's like, don't talk about it. Anyway, so I went to culinary school. No big deal. We're not going to talk about it.
No, I want to talk about it.
Yeah.
Why did you feel that was the route? Did you have like this like passion for food, or was it more the business side of things?
No, this is what's interesting, Nolan. My degree was in management, marketing, and I minored in economics. And so I felt like I've always been able to talk myself out of problems, right? My skill is being able to talk. But do I have an actual physical skill? Like, I don't know. And that's why I went to culinary school, like to prove to myself that can I do something more than just talk? Right? So it's learning discipline. And again, like, can I look at a carrot and cut it into a 1/4 inch cubes? Or, you know what I mean? So I'm always, like Joe said, I'm very competitive. I'm very competitive with myself. Like, I wanted to be the best in the class. I wanted to be the first ranked, right? And so I would be up practicing like my knife skills all night because I wanted to be the best. I was older going in too, right? I wasn't like an 18-year-old kid out of school. So I was more disciplined. And so I think for culinary school, I did it as a way to show, again, make myself uncomfortable and put myself into a situation that I'm like, will I succeed? Like, I don't even know, you know? And so during that time, and while I was still working, that's when my sister got married and bought the wedding cafe. Or the wedding cafe was growing and she was doing all these things. And she, again, my background is in management. And she was saying, you know, I really need help. I need you to come on full time and help me hire and train and bring people in. And at that point, you know, I was just kind of figuring out what I wanted to do next. And I was like, yeah, sure, why not? So, you know, I think I had like 1 or 2 classes left in culinary school and I quit. And I just went to work with my sister. Well, because I'm like, I have a degree. Like, I didn't need a degree. You know, it was just to see if I could do it, right? So I think I ended up working with my sister. I think I was still working at the hotel for a while. And as her company started growing, I worked with her more and more. And then at one point, we had, you know, it was a wedding, you know, like a one-stop shop for weddings. And then we also started wedding planning. And that's where I kind of took over the wedding planning side. And then when we split all the companies, because she had retail also, we split all the companies and we sold the wedding cafe. And she kept her retail store, Eden and Love, as you know. And then I took Fred and Kate. So we basically split the companies apart. Yeah.
So and with the title Fred and Kate events, who are Fred and Kate and all that?
So Fred and Kate are my 2 grandmothers, Winifred and Catherine.
Oh.
So we had a fake couple. Because we're like, what, you know, who knows what's going to happen with anything. So Winifred is my dad's mom. And then Catherine, who is my daughter's named after. That's my mom's mom.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we did Fred and Kate as like a pseudo couple for our company.
Oh,
right.
That's a beautiful backstory. I always just assumed that, you know, like there's just this like mythical couple.
I know, like and it's funny, people call me Kate all the time, and I just answer. No problem. Yeah, yeah.
And so when you went into like this has nothing necessarily to do with weddings and such, but I find it interesting just because I come from a family of entrepreneurs and that they work together as a family and stuff. When you had that situation of your sister reaching out to you and saying, hey, I need you to come work for me and stuff, and knowing how you yourself admitted that you're very competitive and I knowing your sister, she's also very like a A-type personality. How, how did you guys make that work, especially being sisters? Because I feel like a lot of
Yeah.
times that's also going to be a weird dynamic too, right? Like, how did working together,
Yeah.
work out for you guys? How did you
Yeah,
make
so
it
it's
work?
really so okay. I'm gonna say this once and that's it. But I am the older sister, and so it's a really interesting dynamic because right, it was her company, her and her husband Bryson, and so she was my boss. And in general in life, like she's definitely the bigger personality of the two of us. So just because
That's
I'm
Which
hard
is
to
hard
believe.
to believe,
I
right?
Yeah.
know, I
Yeah.
know, you guys, I know. If you know my sister, though, you know she has a big personality too. But so I've always been very passive when it comes to her, so I just kind of not say anything, whatever. I will let her speak, right? I've always been that way with us. But it's funny because when we work together, it's that understanding that she is my boss. And there were definitely times where we fought and struggled. And I think I just told Joseph this story a couple weeks ago. But one time my sister and I just hit that wall where we just started yelling at each other. And Bryson had to close the shop, kick everybody out. And he's like, work it out. And it was something over so stupid. I don't
Wow.
even remember. But, it's like any family business, right? You work it out. You just have to work it out. And I think it's with any partnership, right? Like I said, even with Joseph, right? It's understanding that it's just getting to understand relationships, and just sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's not, but we always have to just keep working through it. So, but
And
it's different with a sister. I'm not gonna lie.
and how did your parents feel about that? Did they go, "Yeah, you guys should work together," or were they like, "This is a bad idea"? Like,
It's funny because my parents, I think in the beginning, were always very like, no, like they weren't really. My dad was an entrepreneur, but I think they were like, stay the safe path, like stay on a job where you can have your benefits and whatnot. And I think starting the wedding cafe was a big deal for them, right? Or even when my sister and them did Eden and Love, it was a big deal. And then when I took Fred and Kate, they're kind of like, are you sure? But once we jump in, they've always been very supportive. I think for them, they just want to make sure that we are good. And that we're taken care of. And I think that's, they've always had our backs and they're always so supportive. I think one time I was really short at a wedding. I'm like, Dad, I need you to just come and like watch this area. He's like, okay.
wow.
Yeah. So it's good. It's really good.
That's awesome. And as far as you've been in this industry for so long, but Jamie was mentioning to me, because I've been doing a better job of taking videos and photos of weddings that I am working at. I haven't posted them yet, but I have them. I'm halfway there.
You're
but
like, they're in
I've
my
been
phone.
yeah, I've been showing them to her because she'll always be curious, like, oh, how was it? Like, oh, this is what it looked like and stuff. And she's mentioning to me the other night, like, man, it is so crazy, because she got married like 15 years ago, and she's like, these weddings nowadays, like, I couldn't even imagine doing, things like this when I was getting married, and I
Right.
couldn't imagine that it's affordable, but like, how are people doing this? And I was like, I don't know, but I feel like things are much more affordable now, maybe because of maybe it's more commonplace of that there's so much emphasis on making the experience even greater and grander. But I don't know that. What would and both of you could answer this too. Like, what would your response be as to like how especially local weddings have evolved as far as all that goes into it? Has it gotten better, or did Jamie just have a real cheap ass wedding? And have things evolved in any ways that you find interesting?
Well, I think, just really quickly, I know Joe's got a lot to say too, but I think it's definitely not gotten cheaper. It's gotten a lot more complicated and a lot, like before, having a choice of linen was never a question. And I remember when my sister got married, even, 15 years ago, the fact that she had like an ombre of linens, like different colored linen, was a huge deal, right? Like a huge deal. And so I think there's so many more options, which can be very overwhelming for people. I get a lot of couples where, I'm working with them and their parents were like, when I got married, these weren't options, or this, it was a Chinese dinner at the Hilton Hawaiian Village, Coral Ballroom, and that was it, and so it's so different than what it is then. I think it can be very overwhelming for people. So, when I meet with couples, it's this is a true idea of what your budget might be, and this is what we should be expecting. I'm sure, Joseph, you see it too, right?
Yeah, well, I guess, again, coming from it from a photographer's perspective, I see things a little different. I think definitely agree, like, weddings are more expensive, but I also think they're way bigger productions than they maybe were before, where it's like you're trying to create an experience, but you're also trying to create like photo opportunities for people's Instagrams. Like, I think like everything is with like social media, everything is, I don't know, people are more braggy like than they've ever been before. Look at my wedding. Look at how beautiful my wedding photos are. Look at my decor. Look at, like these. And so like when you look at weddings that are happening now, I feel like people pay more attention to like a lot of like signature things. So like you've seen weddings where they'll bring in lounge chairs and rugs and all these things that you would never have seen that probably in our parents' generation. And I think that it's great. I think it's super cool that there's so many creatives that are, getting to do different things. But I also think it's a lot more expensive than it ever has been.
So it's maybe more people are putting more emphasis and value on it, so they're willing to spend more. So that's why it looks more of a.
And I think it depends on the couple, And I think it's funny because I think Joseph and I will come at it from different points of view, but for me as a wedding planner, right? And there's a ton of different wedding planners with different perspectives on what they're looking for, right? And they have some with the focus on the decor and the design and all of the looks. For me, what's really important is the couple and really just finding that connection with them and having them have this amazing, super fun wedding. And it may not be over the top, and it may be the standard banquet linens and the whatever, right? And I know from a photo standpoint, you're not going to get these really, really gorgeous room shots. But if the couple is having a good time and they're happy and they're with each other and their families, like for me, like that's what makes me happy. When I'm working on weddings, it's just having these couples having this really, really fun day with their closest family and friends. It may not be Instagram worthy in that sense. But I love those just as much, possibly even more than the over the top, gorgeous decor driven weddings.
Also just to add on to that, I think one of the most awkward like episodes we recorded was about budget, right? And like, that's something that's really hard for people to talk about, with regards to planning a wedding. And I think that like, that's one of the, probably the most important episodes that we recorded though, is like, when you're planning a wedding, what are your means for this? Like, how much do you really want to invest in this? What's important, and I think that's something that is like a foundational piece to your overall success. If you're spending too much money, and we had a wedding just recently where they were way over budget, and we were so over budget that they were stressed out the whole time. And it was like they were thinking about money, not thinking about actually experiencing the event. And every time someone drank a beer from the bar or whatever, it's like, oh, it hurts.
Listen, when you say we, not me. That was not my wedding.
That's true.
I was like, that was not mine. We are really good about budget, not me.
I had a wedding. No, we did talk about this. You and I did talk about this on.
Yeah, we did. We did.
And I think that that's something that, again, like bringing it back home to like, sort of our joint project together. It's like, there's some things that we've learned over years of doing weddings and things that I think are super valuable. And, as weddings evolve to be these big productions, it's like, how can you still have a wedding, but not go broke doing it,
Yeah.
And have that experience rather than having that stress, right?
That must put you guys both in a unique position, because I feel like there's two sides for you. One side is the creative, which probably sees all this variety and options as like awesome, because it's like gives you a bigger canvas and more tools. But then the other side, you want to have, it be run efficiently and smoothly and simplified and that's probably like when you see that variety, it's like, oh my gosh, it's too much. It's overwhelmed for the couples and stuff. So it's probably something where you guys have to kind of balance in between, kind of in that gray area, right?
Right. And I think that's what I try to do. When I work with couples, it's how do we find that balance, right? Give them what they want, but really focus on what's important to them. And I think really, my whole job is, how important is this? Where does this fall on your scale? What is your priority? and try to give them the best day possible with the budget that they're working with. That's really what I try to do at the end of the day. Yeah, I don't know what Joe does. I think he just tries to make them laugh. I don't know.
Well, but honestly, like my job is so different than yours. Like it just inherently is. Like I show up and I capturing moments. Like, give me something to work with. Give me something. Give me your smiles. Give me your energy. I don't get to touch any of the budget stuff. I don't get to touch any of those things. And so I think just by the nature of what I do, it's just a little different. But
But honestly, I think it's so important because I think for me as a planner, I do so much of the front work, and we're working on the budget, we're working on this design, we're working on a lot of these things. On the wedding day, I have to trust that these vendors are going to execute what their vision was, right? So having someone like Joe at the wedding and knowing that he can bring it and keep them in that good mood. We've worked so hard on hyping them up, and so working with a team of vendors like yourself, Nolan, right? Knowing that, okay, great, MC is set. He's going to bring it. You're right. Working with Joe and knowing that, okay, the couple's going to feel comfortable. They're going to have a good time, right? It just makes it a great day for the couple. And really at the end of the day, that's all I want for them.
Yeah. No, I think that you guys both, even though you're so different and unique in what your experiences are and which angles you come from it, like collectively, you guys make such the difference for a couple and for their guests, and having the right kind of heart that you guys possess in having that be your motivation of you wanting the couple to have a good time and to have this be the perfect night. That's what makes you guys so good at what you do, and why it's worth having people like yourselves in these couples corners, because I've seen when that's not the heart of the vendor or whatnot, and it hurts to see what happens when that occurs. So I'm just glad that you guys
the Caesar Milan thing. You're taking the Caesar Milan, right? And
yeah,
we're running
next time I'm working a wedding with you, I'm just gonna go. Instead of trying to be nice and like, ladies and gentlemen, can I please get Joseph said it would work.
I don't know what is upset with Caesar Milan. He's so sad.
Well, knowing that you guys are on the pulse of what's trending, what's new, what's great, what's working for weddings, is there something that, and I'm sure each of you have a different answer, but for those listening that are either like, what's going on in weddings or planning one, is there something like a new trend or cool thing that you like, that you're seeing, that you would want couples to know about, like to incorporate, whether it's, hey, plan to shoot a photo shoot around, a sprinkler system, or what, like,
don't do that. Don't do that.
I think I've mentioned this, I think maybe on our podcast, but one thing that I really like that people are doing now is they are doing their personal vows during their first look. So instead of doing it at the ceremony, they're just reading it to each other when they see each other for the first time. I think it's so intimate and it's so heartfelt, and I love it. Like every time I see it, I was like, oh my God, this is the best. Like every single time, like it's so personal. They're not nervous because they're not around all of their guests.
Yeah.
Like they're just doing it to each other, right? So I think for me, it's not like a flashy trend, but I love that so much. Like I love it when they do that.
So you're saying they read their vows before the ceremony, before they see everybody?
Yeah.
And I hate it because like what happens is the bride is like, she gets all emotional, makeup is dripping all over, and it's like disgusting, and then she has to walk down the aisle after she spent 2 hours, getting her hair and makeup.
I love it.
It's horrible. Like, do that in front of everybody. Come on.
Who's wrong?
No, it is cute. We're seeing that. I guess like the most popular thing that I see happening is these champagne tower things. Have you seen these? Like, so the champagne tower. It looks like instead of a cake cutting, they set up this big set of champagne flutes and they pour a bunch of bottles of wine or champagne, and then they pass it out to everybody instead of cake cutting. I personally don't like wedding cakes, so I'm like all about this. Tessa,
Why don't you like wedding cakes?
Right? What's wrong with him? We disagree about this too.
There's a few companies that do it totally right. They're awesome, but like when it goes wrong, it's like 3-week-old sponge cake that's like been sitting in a freezer. It's disgusting. I think.
He has no
I
taste.
prefer champagne.
He didn't go to culinary school.
And we're back at culinary school.
It's their heart attack just for him.
I prefer alcohol. I'm sorry. Judge me.
These are all great arguments.
Nolan's
I see you both.
He's like, yeah.
Just when I think I'm going one way, you pull me the other way. This is why I love your guys' dynamic.
Thank you. This is what we do. We keep you on your toes.
But this champagne tower, I don't think I've seen it in person, but my question is, as you're describing it and I'm imagining it in my head, like how do they pour it without it? Like one shaky flute would fall and that would destroy the whole thing. It sounds like a very stressful situation.
Nolan, you pour slowly. That's the secret.
Okay.
You can't go fast.
I'm waiting for my champagne, champagne tower disaster. It'll happen. I'm sure it's like probably all over the internet, but it hasn't happened for me yet. But yeah,
I have one coming up next week. No disasters. It'll be fine.
But Joe, what do you, aside from your hatred towards wedding cakes, Joe, what is it about this that you like that you're seeing that you want to see more of?
I think that for me, it's a new tradition, right? I love seeing some new traditions instead of just kind of going through. Like, do you really? If you're not into cake, don't do cake. You know what I mean? If you don't like talking in public, don't do a speech. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's like for me, it's like I like seeing things that are twists on traditions. And so the champagne tower thing is, I think, is something that's trending right now. There's all kinds of different ways that we talked a lot about, like, does a wedding gown need to be white? And like that's tradition, but are we seeing, can you pull off doing something different? And I think, like, for me, I like to see some of those things happen where it's not just like, I guess, like sometimes I feel like couples feel like they have to go through the motions, and and it's like there's sometimes that these are really cringy things to do publicly. Like, for example, the bouquet toss, right? It's like, if everybody at your wedding's married except for one chick, like don't do a bouquet toss. It's a horrible idea. Like, what can you do, right? That like is different. That still gives your guest something fun to do. And so, like, there's all those different things we can do. Like
something really fun that we're doing, and and we talked about this wedding earlier. But this couple that we're doing this wedding for next month, and they are party the Wolf of Wall Street, right? So we were going to do a champagne toast, and he mentioned something about like not being into champagne, and I was like, why are we doing a champagne toast? Like, they are ravers, they hardcore party, and I was like, let's do a shot. So we're going to pour around shots for everyone with these little LED light bulbs in each. I don't know. I hope they don't choke on it. I'm very nervous about this because they are insistent that it's going to be in there. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. But so we're going to, like, the vision is in the middle of his speech, right? The Wolf of Wall Street. We're going to hand out. So all of these servers will be handing out just these shots for everyone to grab. And there's about 100 people. So we're going to hand it out. So at the end of his speech, when the swearing and the cheering and the hype happens, they're all going to take a shot instead of champagne, which I think is so perfect for them. Not for every wedding, but for their personalities, it's so perfect. So I'm stoked.
I'm wondering why I'm not working this wedding. This sounds awesome. I just want to be a guest there. Maybe I'll get invited as a guest.
I hope you do. It's going to be so much fun.
Just don't choke on the LED light.
Now I'm really nervous about that you brought that up, Tessa, because there's probably some elderly that are like, oh, is this edible? And just
I've questioned them more than once about the fact that, do you think people will eat they said they'll be fine, so we'll see. I don't know, man. One time, many years ago when I was much younger, these friends of mine,
gave me a flaming shot and it was on fire, and I didn't understand like how to drink this. And then they're like, just take it. And I was like, while it's on fire? And they go, hurry. And I was like, okay. And as I drank it, it started spilling and my shirt caught on fire. And
Oh
they
my
went,
gosh.
oh my gosh, I can't believe you actually did it. I was like, you told me to. And that's what I'm thinking now is like, people are like, oh, just take the shot. Like, really? Okay. And like, oh, I'm choking. Like, you told me to drink it. It's like, no, I didn't say drink the shot with the light. Oh,
And
now I
then you
have
go say
anxiety
it for
about this
7
wedding.
years.
It's gonna
Yeah,
be. I'm so excited.
but going to your guys' point, like as far as couples having difficulty, making something for themselves or realizing that they can just make whatever make sense for themselves. I think every single first meeting I have with couples, the first thing that they will say is, well, we've never been married before, so like what are we supposed to do? Like, do
Right.
we have to do cake cutting ceremony? Do we have to do a first dance? And I have to get them comfortable with the idea of like, you don't have to do any of these things that you don't want to, and we can do whatever sounds like would be fun and would resonate with you and your guests. And it's such a scary thought for them at first because they're like, no, this is tradition. You gotta do
Right.
these things. So
Right.
I'm with you guys on that, of this idea of having these couples know that, hey, you can get really creative and customize the experience to fit you.
Yeah, and I think, we really try to do that, right? As I always tell people that same thing, like, it's your wedding. You don't have to do really any of these traditions if you don't want to, or if you really want to, then we build it in. So either way is fine, but it's your wedding, right? So make something that feels good to you.
Yeah, and plus also like, we're just talking about this wedding. I want to be a guest at this wedding. I think the reason why is like,
No.
it's not just like going to
Wow.
right? What was it?
She said no. Like, you're not allowed to be at the wedding.
No, you gotta work. No drinking.
All right, fine. But I mean, I really do. Like, it's going to be fun. And again, the reason why is it's just not going through the motion. It's like they're planning some unexpected things. And when you think of like that big day, it's like, if it's just like another cake cutting and another speech, and like someone's like, oh, I didn't prepare a speech, it's like, nobody wants to be there. But like if it's custom to like, this is the couple, this is their energy, this is what they're into. They're into like EDM music, don't have a polka band. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Wait, do we have polka bands
I
here?
know.
Because if we do, I'd like to hire them for some reason. I think that'd be hilarious.
I guess that's my extreme. What's the opposite of EDM? I think it's a polka band. I don't know. That's just me.
And we haven't even gotten into your Uncle Larry, Joseph.
He probably has
We'll have to do another recording.
Yeah. Guys, this has been so much fun. This is exactly why I wanted to have you on, because knowing you from a personal standpoint, I knew it'd be fun, but also getting to see you in your podcast relationship and how that's been going, I knew this would be fun. But I just think it's absolutely awesome what you guys have created with your podcast, and it is something that's so unique in a world full of tons of wedding podcasts. I really think that your specific platform and format is so unique, and the fact that you guys have the right personalities and perspectives to pull it off is just awesome. So I want to say congratulations on being the first of the friends that have reached out to me about starting a podcast that actually did it. You guys broke the trend, and I know it's a lot of work, but you guys, it was worth it because you guys have put together such an amazing show, and I'm a huge fan.
Yay!
Thanks,
Yay!
Nolan.
And then, okay, we got to plug ourselves then. Can we plug real quick?
Yes. So how can people
Unveiling
get in touch with
Paradise.
you and what you do? Yes.
Yeah, so Unveiling Paradise.
So where
your go-to
can they listen to
destination
you?
web. Yeah. So we are on all the major platforms for podcasting. So Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all that sort of stuff. And so, yeah, check it out. I mean, of course, it's really fun to get all the. I'm sure, Nolan, you get a lot of feedback from your listeners and questions and stuff. That's, I think, one of the best part of the show is like that community that you create with your listeners and stuff.
And
Yeah.
and
Nolan, but
and
here, one more question for you, Nolan.
sure.
Now that we've had a talk, now that you've met both of us, who's funnier?
um,
Well, we know that he's
I
scared
think-
of you.
yeah,
And my sister. So just keep that in mind when you answer your question.
So
Yeah,
the smart
and-
answer is you, Tessa.
yeah, and Tessa is responsible for helping me get booked for weddings,
Same.
whereas
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. What
I-
does Joseph do for you? I
I
don't
will.
know.
I'll just say that I love you guys together and separately at the same time.
Good answer. Good answer, Nolan.
Fair. We'll take that. Even though I know it's me. No.
And of course, for those of you who are going to be listening for the first time to Unveiling Paradise, you can really help out Joseph and Tessa by leaving a comment or rating for them in whatever platform that you're listening to them and experiencing them with. So the more the ratings and comments that they get, then the more the algorithms will say like, hey, this is something that their listeners are really engaging with and liking, and they'll share it with other listeners who that the algorithm thinks might benefit from their show. So please help support them by not only listening to their podcast, but also liking and subscribing and commenting and reviewing their podcast as well. And then as far as your guys' individual businesses go, I want to give you guys a chance to plug that as well. So Joseph, you went first the initial time, so I'm going to go with the funny Tessa Gomes. How can people get connected with you and your company?
Yeah, so my wedding planning company is Fred and Kate, and you can find me at fredandkate.com.
And
let's
the
go back to the
hilarious
funnier-
Joseph Esser.
Yeah. And I am the funnier one, so just keep that in mind.
No. So thank you so much, Nolan, for having us. So my business, Joseph Esser Photography, we do photo and video, and we really specialize just in weddings. So thank you so much. And then can I just quickly turn it back on you? If you haven't smashed the 5-star button on hanging out with Nolan Hong, come on, people. Let's do this already.
We did.
We did.
Thank you.
You and I have smashed that button. Everybody who's listening to the
Hey.
show, come on.
You know what? That brings up something. So I was looking at our ratings and stuff, and I see I think I'm at 4.75 or something like that. And then I was like, so that means that there is a less than 5-star rating, and somebody gave me a 1-star review, and so that made me so sad. But
That's
then I
horrible.
also felt like, oh, then I know I've made it because they say
Yeah,
like
if
you
you
know
have
you made it if
haters,
you have a hater.
you've
Yeah,
made
yeah.
Yeah. Don't worry, Nolan. I have a lot of haters. It's only because I've made it in my head.
We're
you're
going to find out
awesome.
who that 1-star
You're
rater is, though. We're going to track them down. Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't
It was
worry.
probably Joseph.
This changes everything.
I know. Cut him out of the episode.
Tessa's way funnier now. You're not even funny at all.
I knew it.
Hey, and before you go, can we plug also or explain what OWA is about for any people in the industry that want to join or get involved or how they can support?
Yeah. You want to jump in, Tessa?
No,
you're
you're the
All
president.
right. Okay.
Yeah, I was going to
Right.
say, Mr. President.
This is a soon-to-be new president. No, I don't know. So the Oahu Wedding Association is a trade organization, and it's for wedding professionals. So if any listeners are in the wedding industry on Oahu, this is kind of like your network to just kind of work through like a lot of professionalism and social networking and that kind of thing. And we get the privilege to advocate for all the small businesses that we represent, with our elected officials, city council, the mayor's office, and all those places. So it's even though we are a lot of us are micro businesses, we don't have a ton of employees. It's really good to have representation for the people who are making decisions about our industry, and that's what we do.
Yeah, and it's a really fun group of people because I got to attend my first OWA party, which I thought I used to before going. I used to think like, oh, that's the cool kids. Like I don't I could only be so fortunate to be invited. And then I think I just invited myself because I saw an an announcement about it. I was like, I'm just gonna go, and I got over my fear of like, oh, am I gonna not fit in and stuff. It was such a fun time, and it's like a family reunion. Like so many people that I've worked with for so many years and stuff, and it was such a fun time and such a positive environment, and it's just cool. I'm not the type to get involved with the partying and the dancing, but just to sit right on the fringe and watch it, I was like, I feel like I'm with my people. So it's been really cool in my short but exciting new connection with this group. I can attest that it's a wonderful group of people.
What I'm hearing is we're going to get you to dance this year. That's what I'm hearing.
Oh, man. Maybe if you get me to swallow accidentally one of those LED lights in a shot, my convulsions might be similar to what would be considered dancing. So, yeah.
That's a deal. Shaking hands right now.
Yeah. Tessa, Joseph, this has been so much fun. I'm so glad that we got to do this. Thanks for taking your time out of your crazy schedules to make this day happen. And congratulations again on a successful season 1 of the Unveiling Paradise podcast. And good luck on the future seasons. More to come. And look forward to seeing you guys real soon at a wedding near you.
Thank you so much, Nolan. Thanks for having us.